Hi, Nathan Davis here for Photogin with NHD, and we're here at the ruins in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm going to be taking some pictures today in HDR of the ruins. It's late evening, getting ready to turn dark. We're kind of in the end of the golden hour, which is right before dusk. So here we go. Alright, so I have my camera set up. I'm going for 40th of a second at 5 aperture, 5 aperture. And I also have my ISO at 100. You don't want to go with a high ISO when you're doing HDR photography because it will result in higher noise levels. So when you're doing this, the higher the ISO, the more noise you're going to have in your image because you're taking 3 exposures and you're combining them into one. Combined level of grain will basically cause matrixing in the imaging, normal noise, or basically regular noise, which is you create line patterns in the image from the noise patterns. So what I'm going to do is take 3 exposures. I have AEB set up on here, which is auto exposure bracketing, and that's going to take a photo that's 1 stop up and 1 stop down from the normal exposure that I have set here. Now I used my light meter in the camera to set up my manual exposure. And the best way to do that is to make sure you have a proper seal on the eye cup of the camera, and that gives you the best possible metering of the light coming from the lens. If you don't have proper seal on the eye cup, it can cause light leaks from the back, and that can result in a skewed setting on your exposure. So I'm going to wait until this person moves out of the way, and then I'm going to take my 3 exposures. And because the light is failing, I had to reduce my shutter speed again. Usually like every 5 minutes or so, you're about a stop difference at this time of day. Alright, well my focus is a little sloppy here. What I'm going to do, and I'm out of frame here, what I'm going to do is get my remote, and since I'm shooting at around almost a second of a stop, or a second shutter speed, that's going to result in more predominance and shake as a result of the shutter. Now, and the mirror assembly in the camera. It also is going to affect it just by pushing the button on the camera. So if you push the button on the camera, that creates jarring as well. And being such a slow shutter speed, that can affect everything. Another thing that you might want to think about is if you're near a roadway or anything like that, is to hang a weight from your camera, because the roadway itself and any traffic on it can cause shake. Or vibration, which results in a reduced sharpness of the image. Of course, I'm waiting here patiently as everybody, if I can get a clear shot of this, but I have to wait until everybody clears. Now, one thing I do use as a weight if I'm out and I'm near a roadway or any place like it's windy or anything like that, I use my bag. It's not recommended because you've got expensive equipment in here. I do need to get a sandbag, which is what you can hang from here. But hanging your bag, just make sure that the strap is fully on the hook. Because no matter how well padded your bag is, if it falls, you're going to damage your lenses or knock them out of alignment. Alright, I'm at about a 13th of a second on my shutter speed. Again, my aperture is 5.6. This is a 10 to 18 millimeter EFS lens that I'm using, so it is a wide angle lens, and I do have it set to 18. Focus. Now I'm going to use this, and again I have my bag here, so it's weighted. Any cars going by is not going to cause vibration that can affect it or the wind. And also I'm using the remote, that way I don't get any kind of sharpness issues, which I was getting with the first 3 exposures. It's still slightly soft the further you zoom in, but if you're zooming in over 100% on your image, really you can't expect that it's going to be sharp everywhere. But overall the exposure looks good. I do have 3 exposures that I am going to combine into an HDR image that I will show when I'm done. And I am also going to go around the other side, because on the other side they have statues from this building. It was part of a New York skyscraper, I believe, that was demolished and they brought here, and they call it the ruins because it kind of looks like ruins, even though it's really not. It's just controlled demolition, but yeah. So I'm going to go on the other side here so I can take pictures of that, and then I'll show you the HDR images once I'm done. Alright, now I'm on the other side here. I'm going to pan around so you can see. Hopefully, there's statue effigies up here of Atlas holding up the temple. So what I'm going to do is, again, do a 3 exposure HDR, and first is metering. Alright, I'm coming up with a 1/10 of a second at 5.6 and 100 ISO. I'm going to go ahead. Oh yes, got really good pastel colors from the sky because you got the failing light in the background. There's failing light coming through the background here, and you know, so all those pastel colors are really going to add to the image. And what you want to do is make sure that you can encompass that. Because this is backlit, you want, with an HDR exposure, you want to cover and make sure that you are capturing the statues and the background colors. You don't want one blown out or one in shadow, or blacked out, which is basically there's no data. Blown out is if it's overexposed, the white area you can't garner any detail from. Basically it's blank, there's no data. Blackout's the same thing, it's just a underexposed image and there's no data in the shadows. So even if you lighten it up, you're not going to get a good image. So you want to make sure when you're doing HDR that you are encompassing the full subject matter and you don't have any blown out or dark areas. I'm going to change it by a stop difference. I'm going to take 3 more exposures, and that way I'm assured that I will have the detail in the statues and also the sky. And that's a stop difference. So what I'm going to do is go the other way, because this is going to be a 7 exposure image. So I went the other way, and now I'm going to stop the other way. Actually going to make it that's a stop difference there. And now I'm going to take 3 more exposures. And try to make sure that you don't alter your framing at all. The more you alter your framing or anything changes in the frame, you're going to have ghosting when you do HDR. But I'm going to take these photos back and I'm going to go ahead and edit them together and see what I get.
Alright, well here are the 3 images for the first image I did. Let me pull these up. And the first image was taken at 1/6 of a second, 5.6 aperture, and the ISO was 100. And I had the focal length set to 18 millimeters. The second image was 1/13, and the third was 1/25. So one image was 1 stop up, one image was 1 stop down, and they were combined to create this. And as you can see, I enhanced the sky to bring out more of the colors, the evening colors and pastels, and I tried to make sure that in doing so I didn't hyper intensify the reds and the brick. That's one of the troubles with reds and purples, is sometimes if you pull the image too far one way or the other with your dynamic range layers, you're going to kind of create this artificial toning, and sometimes it can flatten out those colors because reds and purples are some of the hardest to render colors in the spectrum. And so they have a lower dynamic range than your greens, which have the highest, and your blues. So this light's made up of 3 different colors: red, green, and blue. So the red sometimes can be a little hard to get right, and so I try to work with those just so they don't look kind of flat and artificial in tone. And this is the 7 images that I used for the backside, the second image. And with this, what I did, when I took the images, I did take 9 images, but you have to take out 2 because one of them is going to be set at the exposure that's 1 stop up, so that's going to have a duplicate, and the exposure that's 1 stop down, so that's going to have a duplicate. So those you can take out. Then you take those images and you fuse them together. I use Photomatics to do my fusing of the multiple exposures into one image, and then I use Photoshop for doing some other alterations. And this is the image that I got out of it. And as you can see, I really worked hard to bring out those pastel colors in the sky, and again, trying not to have artificially toned reds in the brick. You don't want to make it look artificial or cartoonish, because high dynamic range basically expands out your contrast between black and white. So you have many more scales of gray in the tone, which affects the toning of every color in the image. And it really brings out detail. This came out very close to the way I wanted it to. I might venture back out there again and try it again, maybe on a less populated day, because yeah, I have a lot of people that just kept walking in my way. But you know, hey, that's what you deal with. Because again, when something's backlit and you're trying to do high dynamic range, having as many exposures as possible going in both directions is important, because you can then make sure that you can capture the sky correctly and capture the shaded detail, and have both exposed, properly. Experiment, play around with different programs and play around with different exposures to see what you get. High dynamic range photography is just a wonderful form of photography. It really expands out what you can do with your camera. Yeah, I'm quite happy with how these turned out, and just let me know what you think in the comments. And remember, like and subscribe.